All right, boys, imagine this for a second here. Imagine, just take a second. I want you to imagine something different. Imagine that things have gone back to normal. Okay. So things are back to normal. They're back to the way they were prior to the pandemic, meaning that travel, crowds, all those things are occurring once again. And I want you to think for a second and then tell me, imagine you're given the chance to go to any NHL rink in North America. So you can go to any one of the teams and see them live. What team are you going to and why? I'm going to start with Sanjay in my bottom corner here. And I want to know where you're going to go and why.
That's a good question. The obvious answer is Montreal, right? But I don't want to take the obvious answer because, I mean, it's
anywhere in North America, but Montreal's the obvious answer?
Yeah, man. Okay, maybe it's not the obvious answer. For me, it's the obvious answer. I mean, if I could go anywhere in North America to watch a hockey game, hell yeah, I'm going to Montreal. Like, this
What's
is like
the hand up.
Oh, someone's got a question. I feel like a teacher.
Yeah, that's right. The obvious and easy answer is Florida. Lower amount of crowds. You're still paranoid, right? You know you're going to have at least 2 seats in between the next person.
Wait, hold up. If you're still like worried about COVID, I don't really know if Florida's the best place to be going to.
It's post-pandemic, baby.
That's right. There's no pandemic in this
pandemic's
scenario.
Gone. We're all healthy and all vaccinated.
Okay.
I'm going Montreal then. You know, just to see like the history of the Habs. You know, to see it. I mean, I know the Montreal Forum. It's the Bell Center now, right? It's not what it used to be, but it still is Montreal and it still is hockey, and that for me is the obvious answer.
So Adam, you're going to Florida?
Well, if it's all cleared up, I'm going someplace I haven't before, and I think it's going to be somewhere within the Metropolitan Division where they're all close together, where I can kind of make some trips to see multiple games. So that would be like Pittsburgh, Philly, somewhere in there, Boston. That'd be kind of cool.
You're cheating the system.
I say exactly. You're the same guy that's like, I want 1,000,000 wishes. No.
Yeah.
one team.
Okay, fine. If it's
like
one,
it's a team.
If it's a team, I think I'm going to Colorado because I want to see Nathan McKinnon live.
Want to see the best hockey player in the world? Good choice.
That was my pick.
Against the Oilers, and I'd still be watching the number 1 too.
Elon, I assume that's your pick.
That was my pick. I'll go with a different one, I guess. But that was my pick. I too would also choose somewhere I haven't been that I've really wanted to travel to, but yet the team is still really good and fun to watch. If I can't go Colorado, I'll say Philadelphia. That's a place I've always wanted to visit, and they have a pretty good team right now.
Sanjay, you've been to
Philly. Then I can run those rocky steps.
I've been to Philly.
You don't like
different.
I've
that
been
is
to
fun.
Philly.
No, Philly's a beautiful city, but it changes. Like you're walking down cobblestone streets, and the next thing you know, people are looking at you, and there's like garage doors shut in the front of buildings, and it's a tough city,
crowd to go if you're cheering for the road team.
I'll just wear a Lindros jersey.
Yeah, well, you probably still get booed.
And for me, I think I'm going to go and see the Vegas Golden Knights. Probably the best in-house entertainment around, as well as probably one of the best outside of hockey city experiences. That's where I think I would go if I could go when this is over.
Would have loved to have gone to one of their playoff games when they went to the Cup final there. Like their pre-game stuff, their pre-game entertainment was insane.
Yeah.
Exactly. With that, we're going to start our episode of Delayed Offside. Welcome to the episode. Delayed Offside. All right, welcome back. Thanks for listening. Thanks for taking part in this. We've had some feedback, 66% positive feedback, so that's something right there. A little bit of banter online. We're continuing our breakdown of the North Division, the only division that Canadians probably really care about. And we're going to move a little bit further towards the east by staying in the last of the Prairie provinces and hitting the Winnipeg Jets. Now, the Winnipeg Jets are one of the teams that was probably our best chance for a couple years ago, but things have gone a little bit different here. So we're going to take a look here at the Winnipeg Jets regular season summary speed run.
Early into the season, Winnipeg failed to sell out their arena for the first time since moving from Atlanta. On the 26th, the Jets won the Heritage Classic against the Flames. Later that month, Dustin Byfuglien, who was earlier suspended by the team for not showing up to training camp, decided to undergo ankle surgery. He'd end up never playing in the NHL again, choosing to retire after the season. On November 5th, Brian Little was hit in the head with a puck and suffered a brain bleed and a perforated eardrum. He'd missed the entire season and won't play in the upcoming campaign either. At the time of the All-Star break, the Jets were sitting 4th in the Central Division with 54 points. Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuyck were selected to the All-Star team. On December 21st, Blake Wheeler became the highest-scoring player in franchise history, surpassing Ilya Kovalchuk's 615 points. On February 12th, Paul Maurice was given a 4-year contract extension. At the trade deadline, the Jets traded for Dylan DeMello and Cody Eakin. When the season was suspended, the Jets were sitting 5th in the Central Division, 9th in the Western Conference, with 80 points in 71 games, a 92-point pace. Now let's take a look inside the numbers. These stats are all situations per 60 minutes and are from NHL.com and Natural Stat Trick. As you can see, there's not a lot of green to see here. They are the only Canadian team who finished top 10 in just one of these statistics. And that one statistic is save percentage. This team relied heavily on their goaltending. And what a season Hellebuyck had. He tied for most games played at 58. He faced the most shots and made the most saves. Despite seeing all of that rubber, he still had a .922 save percentage, recorded the most shutouts with 6, and was second in wins with 31. That earned him the Vezina Trophy and being named to the NHL First All-Star Team. And that was the Winnipeg Jets regular season summary speed run.
Wow, great speed run, man. Just your voice, the enthusiasm, I love it. Good job. So we're just going to do a little bit different than last episode. We're going a little bit of stuff when it comes down to it. But first thing we're going to do is look at the regular season and how the team did. So I'm going to start there with, and I believe the person who did this one was
Sanjay.
Sanjay, was it you, Sanjay? Yeah. We're going to start with Sanjay here, and he's going to take a look at the regular season and a little bit about the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, man, the Winnipeg Jets regular season last year, coming into it, they had a little bit of trouble. They had some defensemen leave. Trouba left, Myers left, and then at the eve of training camp, Big Buff decided to retire. He said he was done. He's going home. And so that left a big hole for the Jets to fill. Luckily, they had the best goalie in the world last year in Connor Hellebuyck, who won the Vezina Trophy. That's a huge, huge award. Good for him. Going into this season, the main question mark for the Winnipeg Jets, Patrik Laine. Is he going to go or is he going to stay? A lot of talk about Patrik Laine wanting out. There's a lot of speculation that this is his last year. This is last year in his deal. And he hasn't really stopped that speculation. Every time he's asked about it, he doesn't come out and say, Winnipeg's where I want to stay. I want to be here. He leaves quotes like, well, if Gretzky could get traded, anyone could get traded. So it doesn't really, he's not really hiding it.
Was that him or the GM that said that?
What's that?
Was that him or the GM that said that?
No, it was Laine.
It was Laine.
Yeah. Was it? I thought it was the GM.
Yeah, he came out and said that. So, it's a little bit sad because you see all these players trying to leave Winnipeg. It was Evander Real Deal Kane. He wanted out. And there was one other player that wanted out, and the name's escaping me right now. But it seems to be an issue in Winnipeg right now, and it's too bad. Hopefully they can get fair value for Laine, but so a lot of question marks there. But one positive, one player that does want to play in Winnipeg is Patrick Stastny. He is coming back to
Patrick
Winnipeg.
Stastny.
Old Patty. Patty Stazzy.
I was like, did I say his dad's name? Because sometimes I get them mixed up. I was like, what? Yeah, so I looked up. He's 35 years old now, which makes me feel really old because I remember when he was like a young buck going into the league. So he came back. He played for Winnipeg for a bit when they had their deep playoff run, and he made a trade. They made a trade with Barron's Vegas Golden Knights, and Vegas shed some cap, and Winnipeg got some secondary scoring. So overall, it was a solid trade, and they'll look to see if they can make the playoffs again this year.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Like they were in kind of a tough spot, like you mentioned. They lost Buffalo. And they lost Trouba. Myers had walked. Trouba was leaving, so they had to trade him for something else. And they kind of surprised a ton of people by pushing late to try to make a playoff run before the season got shut down. And inevitably, had the season continued, they probably would have fallen short or just snuck in. But that was a big turnaround for that team that they ended up having that kind of a switch occur. And we're looking towards the new system in the playoffs. They didn't make a lot of noise. I thought Calgary had actually ended up with one of the harder matchups, ending up with Winnipeg, considering the strength of goaltending, the offensive force that they had, at least down on the wings. And then eventually what ended up occurring here was Calgary just injured their top players, and then the series was essentially over. So it was a little bit of a turnaround. And I think it's kind of crazy when you think about it, that's a team that probably no one expected to be competitive. And it surprisingly was, based not on the back end, but who was closing the door for everyone, which was Connor Hellebuyck.
Oh, they rode Hellebuyck. Absolutely. He carried that team. Their defense was terrible. Like you said, they were gutted. Although I found it interesting. I was just kind of looking into some stats before this podcast, and I just took a look at the season prior when they had all those guys. And I was expecting them to have been a lot better defensively, but I was surprised. They actually had bad defensive stats then too. So I don't know if it's a system thing with Winnipeg or what's going on. But they're just not a good defensive team. And another difference was their power play.
Yeah, they had a lot of penalties called against them as well the year previous. Sorry.
Okay. Oh, that's fine. Yeah. Okay. So
you guys are so cordial with each other.
I know we're too polite on this. We need to just talk over each other.
Yeah.
We'll get there at some point. We'll start hating each other, and then we won't let anyone
Episode
talk.
3.
Yeah, exactly. But in terms of offense, like you look at their forwards, and you just think this team would be dynamic offensively. Scheifele and Wheeler and Laine and Ehlers and you Connor. Yeah, thank you. Just great talent there, but they don't get a lot of shots and scoring chances at 5-on-5. And this past season, they didn't get a lot on the power play either. And I was reading this article in The Athletic, and the author stated that actually those players, they pad their stats with empty net goals. And the quote was, over the past 2 seasons, Wheeler, Scheifele, and Connor are first, second, and third in empty net points, which I found kind of interesting because you view those guys as these elite offensive players, but they're actually not putting up as many points as you might think.
That's actually really surprising.
Yeah, that's a neat stat.
It's kind of disturbing stat, but at the same time, I mean, does it really? I mean, if the team's winning, it doesn't really matter, right? Like they're sealing the deal, which is essentially what you need to do. Lots of teams in those 6-on-5s or 6-on-4s get hemmed in and can't do a single thing. So I think
as long as they make the playoffs, yeah.
So there's, I guess, the question is the playoffs didn't go very well for them. The play-in round, they got beaten. They ended up not making it back. So where do we think this team is going to go moving forward? Like they've lost defensemen. They have some guys coming in on signing deals. They've increased their depth at center. They've lost Brian Little. They still have top scorers in Ehlers, Scheifele, Wheeler. I'll stop saying But they got
Connor.
top scorers available and wingers available, and then they have their second.
William, Adam,
two
is Connor
centers.
like your favorite player or something?
He's got Connor
Apparently.
McDavid,
Don't
and they
forget
both have
about
the
Connor,
same name.
guys.
Yeah.
He is really good, though. He is.
Connor, you guys.
I love all Connors. It doesn't
He's a
matter who
good
you
scorer,
are.
but there's a thing. Okay, so Connor's a good scorer, but like his underlying
Yeah.
stats beyond that aren't very great. Like if you
Well,
were to
exactly.
pick who would you rather have, you'd probably take Ehlers. You'd probably take Laine. It's just that his numbers are better because because you're just looking straight at his goals, right?
Yeah.
He's an elite goal scorer, and so that's an important piece there.
And
But they
again,
had
with
all these
most of their
parts that moved in
forwards,
there that
they're
are really.
and there we go, stopping each other again. No, and looking at their forwards, again, they defensively they're not that great, most of them anyways, right? And so their liability defensively.
Well, that's part of Stastny coming back in, working that two-way center, and then that kind of frees up a little bit else for Scheifele, who is probably one of the most underrated centers in the NHL at this stage. So they have good depth there. They got good wingers up front. Their bottom six is whatever. They've had some holdouts from their training camps, and they've had a huge turnover on defense. But they still have Hellebuyck, and at that stage, you have a chance to kind of go anywhere. There's a guy who had a Vezina season who kept this team competitive in it. But what's going to happen moving forward? Do you think it's possible that they're going to be a strong contender moving forward, that this team's going to be able to perform, and Hellebuyck's going to shut the door and carry them into the round again when it comes to the Canadian division?
I think
it's going to be tough for them. It is, because they don't have a great defensive core, period. They've got a great goaltending duo, I would think, with Laurent Brossoit behind Hellebuyck.
No.
You know what?
That's a good duo. Do you think
he's
that's
good
a
because
good
he's
duo?
from Edmonton.
Oh my
He's a
God.
Flames draft pick,
my
man.
He
Has
is
him
like
for Schmid. Good player.
he
good
is.
player.
There was better.
You go
there
to
was better
Florida?
firm string goaltenders available than that guy. Like, oh my God. Like,
Okay.
what is it? Okay, tell me about Brossoit's game that stands out so well for you.
I'm going to tell you that goalie tandem is better than the sixth defenseman.
Because it has a Vezina goalie attached to it.
That's
Here's the
right.
best
That's right.
goalie in the NHL, and here's like a so-so goalie. That's a really good tandem.
Right, but there's
Yeah,
no
averaging out.
There's no
Yeah,
Norris
they are pretty
caliber
good.
defenseman on the damn
Oh
Jets.
my
There's no
God.
Norris caliber, huh?
Where's the reaction button? There should be a thumbs down reaction button. Here, I'll do the clap button, but I want you to know it's being done very slowly.
Is there a laugh one?
It's a DeSecchi's guy.
I will say this about Hellebuyck. Going into the playoffs, everyone was saying, Calgary, they're going to be outmatched because Hellebuck's a great goalie. They're going to win the goaltending duel, and Hellebuck's going to be the difference maker. I was not impressed with him in that playoffs. He was very average, and I don't know if it's just because the Flames have amazing forwards or the Jets' defense is just lacking. But he looked very average. I think he had a goals against over 3. His save percentage wasn't very good. He was outplayed by Cam Talbot. And, going into that playoffs, no one saw that coming. So maybe he can do it in the regular season, but I think it's just a case of him doing enough to get the team in a position to make the play-in round, whereas if they didn't have him, they wouldn't have been anywhere close to the play-in round.
Yeah, and another thing with help. Oh, go ahead, Baron.
I was gonna say, I think the thing is when it comes down to it, like you can trust that goaltender to carry you far, but as we've seen in Montreal over the years, as we've seen in other cities with elite goaltending, it can only carry you so far.
Mm-hmm.
It's still a team game. You still need something else, and you have to score, but you also have to have defense. And that team has not had a defense system since Byfuglien really left. So this last year, that defense was pretty piecemeal, and it did better because no one expected anything of it. I think in the long term, this kind of a defense is going to wear a goaltender out, and I don't think Hellebuyck will return to form. Go ahead, Pilon.
And the thing with Hellebuyck, too, is usually with Hellebuyck, he has one good year, then one average year. Then one good year, then one average year. So last year, he had an amazing year. Is he going to return to average for this year? And if he does, this team's in trouble because it's going whichever way Hellebuyck is going.
All right, we're going to do a prediction. Same thing as last time. He's going to flash your hand at the screen. Let us know what you think, what position they're going to be with. You can also let us know online on Twitter what you position think they're going to be. If we had a poll, I'd say you could click that poll, but we really don't, so it doesn't matter.
And comment below.
Yeah, comment below. Like, subscribe.
Hit the subscribe.
Every time we say subscribe, take a drink.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. There's a smarter way to do it. All right, so 3, 2, 1. Show where you think this team's going to be.
6 and 5. Not making the playoffs.
6 and 5. Yeah. No, they were tough to do it last year, and I think they're going to be tough to do it this year. We'll move on to
I think
our second team here.
Oh, sorry.
I didn't hear what you were saying. Go ahead.
The two teams are interchangeable. I think between my 5th and 6th rankings, I had Vancouver as 6. So I think they're kind of in those areas. I don't know. I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, put it like a one position disclaimer. Can go up or down by 1. So if you pick 2, you could be 1 or you could be 3rd. Really doesn't matter.
Sounds good. Okay.
All right, we're going to move on to our second team here, which is the Ottawa Senators. Now, the Ottawa Senators were a team that no one had any expectations for, and probably nobody still does. With that, here is our Ottawa Senators regular season summary speed run. Hit it.
The Ottawa Senators made quite a few trades during the season, starting with the October 7th trade for Vladislav Namestnikov. Attendance hit an all-time low for the Senators on October 16th, with only 9,204 fans in the stands. Mark Borowiecki earned the nickname Borocop in December, after stopping an attempted robbery. On January 2nd, another trade, this time acquiring defenseman Mike Riley from Montreal. At the time of the All-Star break, the Sens were 7th in the Atlantic with 42 points. Anthony Duclair was named to the All-Star team. On February 18th, the Senators retired Chris Phillips' jersey. The Sens were sellers at the trade deadline, shipping out Jean-Gabriel Pageau, Tyler Ennis, Dylan DeMello, and Namestnikov. After only 54 days as CEO, Jim Little was dismissed on March 5th. When the season was suspended, the Senators were sitting 7th in the Atlantic, 15th in the East, with 62 points in 71 games, a 72-point pace. Now let's take a look inside the numbers. Let's start with the good. The Senators were a gritty team, finishing top 10 in hits and block shots. And they were actually great at generating scoring chances. However, that did not result in very many goals. The team was also not great at puck possession, and they were horrible at defense, allowing the second most goals per 60 in the league. The player we are highlighting for the Sens is Bobby Ryan. Not because of what he did on the ice, he only played 24 games and registered 8 points. Instead, it is for his battle off the ice. He entered the NHLPA Player Assistance Program in late November to help treat his battle with alcohol abuse. He returned to the ice on February 28th and scored an emotional hat-trick his first game back. He was awarded the Bill Masterton Memorial Trophy. And that is the Ottawa Senators regular season summary speedrun.
All right, thank you for that recap. We're going to go straight to our resident Ontario, our Ottawa Senators superfan, Ryan Pilon. He's going to tell us a little bit about the season that they went to. Oh, you are rocking a Sens jersey. Is that a Spezza?
Oh, Sanjay, do you want to do this one or what?
I should.
That is
no, man. I'm actually a huge Sens fan. They're like my Eastern Canadian team. I've been following them since like 2002, 2003. Like going to school.
So you enjoyed all those beatings that the Leafs gave them in the playoffs.
I have PTSD, okay? I have friends that would just like rag on me because they were all Leafs fans at the time. And every playoffs, I'd be so cocky, like, this is the year we're going to go take you down, Toronto. And every year they would lose, and it sucked.
Patrick Lalime, your favorite goalie.
That is one of the ugliest jerseys, bar none. Like, lacking any inspiration.
No way, man. Look at this. This is solid.
Sens.
It's got the C.
Bad. It's bad, Sanjay.
This is backwards. So it's got the C.
It's not
Speaking of bad, let's talk about the Ottawa Senators.
Let's hear it.
Well, how do you like my transition? So they were the only Canadian team to not make the playoffs. But, you know, they were a rebuilding team, so what can you expect? The offseason, they had a crazy offseason, and thank you so much for giving me the assignment of researching all of the moves they made. So at the trade deadline, they shipped out Jean-Gabriel Pajot, Vladislav Nemesnikov, Tyler Ennis, and Dylan DeMello. Then they didn't make a qualifying offer to their leading goal scorer and one of their reps at the All-Star team, Anthony Duclair. Then they said goodbye to longtime goalie Craig Anderson. Bobby Ryan was bought out. He had 2 seasons left on his contract. Borokop, big thank you to Borokop. Stopped theft, and they say thank you by shipping him on out. Ron Hainsey is still unsigned, and Mikhail Bedker is gone as well. I believe he's playing in Finland. In Evgeny Dadonov, that's a great pickup for them. He's a legit top-line wiener. Matt Murray is their new goaltender. They also brought in Alex Galchenyuk, Braden Coburn, Cedric Paquette, Derek Stepan, Erica Branson. So a lot of moves for the Ottawa Senators this offseason.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't even think I remembered half those moves until you said them. I was like, oh yeah, they did that one too.
Like, where did he end up?
It was a lot. It was a lot of moves.
Was dead.
Especially for a rebuilding team who you would expect to just play their young players. They brought in a lot of veterans, so it'll be interesting to see how it.
My favorite was like you read it pissed off, and you were like, and they thank Borowiecki by shipping him off.
I just like Borokop.
Yeah,
a great name. He also has stuff where he like shows his gardens and stuff on like Instagram or Snapchat and stuff.
Oh,
so
really?
It's kind of neat. Yeah,
that's kind of neat.
Big tough enforcer loves his flowers.
So this team had a huge amount of turnover. Now, regular season, nobody was expecting anything from them. In fact, probably no one had any hopes that this team was going to do much. And then, like you said, they were going to start playing their younger guys and get that going. But long term, they made a ton of big changes. Where do we see this paying off? We'll go to resident nonsense fan Adam, who looks like he's like looking at stats because his head's getting bigger because he's getting closer to the camera.
Well, they have a couple things to look forward to. They've got Brady Tkachuk, who showed a lot of promise.
Best Tkachuk brother by far.
Yeah.
Agreed. Agreed. We all agree.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, the better.
I
the
never
skilled
agreed
one,
to this.
Right? The skilled one.
Yeah, and then they have Tim Stützle coming, the German phenom who played unbelievable in the World Juniors for Team Germany.
Best German player in the NHL for sure.
No,
he's not in the NHL though. That's the problem. Best way
He's
to
my
second.
favorite.
I'm saying it's a bright spot. And then they have Matt Murray, but Matt Murray has a little bit of a history with injuries as well. So it's a fragile team that's the fire's still burning, not as bright, but in terms of dumpster fire, but it's still there, right? And they have their new coach from last year, which is DJ Smith. Am I right?
Yep.
Yeah. So, it's looking a little bit better, but at the same time, you ship out your leading goal scorer and a lot of fan favorites, and that's not going to sit well with your public that already doesn't really quite like you and your fan base. So I don't know. It's still a train that's off the track that they've been working for years to get back on.
Yeah.
And Stan, what do you think?
Sorry, was that me?
Yeah, why do you always cut out when you say someone's name?
Yeah,
I don't get it.
He does that on purpose just to be a dick.
His name. I said Sens fan.
Oh, I see. I didn't hear. It's kind of ironic that the Sens are going back to their earliest jersey because they were like one of the worst teams in NHL history when they wore that jersey, and
they started in that jersey when they started. They
started in that jersey, and they're bringing it back. And this year, I'm predicting much of the same. Like I don't see much. Like any given night, they have some players that can get a win for them, but playing up against this North Division with so many, every game is going to be a rivalry game. Every game is going to be intense. I just don't see them being able to do it for 56 games. It's going to be another draft lottery party for Ottawa. I predict. Like I just don't see it. I just don't see it any way that they make it anywhere higher than maybe 5th place. If like everything goes well, and then they'll finish 5th in the North Division, and that's like letter perfect. That's like their ceiling.
Yeah. Like them bringing in some of these veterans makes me think they'll be tougher to play against, but I still don't see them making the playoffs. Most of their forwards are really third and fourth line players, other than Tkachuk and Dadonov. And they really don't have a top defenseman. Like Chabot will get there someday, but really he should probably be in the second pairing at this point of his career to get development, but he's playing up higher because he has to. And then Adam already talked about Matt Murray. He's been inconsistent the last few years, but he's only 26 years old. Maybe he can bounce back. He's 1 year removed from a .919 save percentage. You know, maybe if Matt Murray gets hot, they can surprise a few people, but I don't see it.
I think it's important to note though, like this is like they're fielding an NHL line, right? Like this is their lineup is NHL from top to bottom. They have a legit number one goaltender, which is not something you could have said about them last year. And I will say, like, if you like follow any Sens fans or reporters online, there's more optimism around this team now than there has been for a while. There was always the downside of how things were occurring with the trades, specifically around Matt Duchene, how players wanted out, how they hated coaches. But they've actually, it's starting to go past that part now. And they're moving on to something a little bit better and a little more productive. You have a good goaltender. Your defense isn't great, but you got young prospects. Stützle, I think, is probably it's interesting because it's World Juniors versus the NHL, but I mean, he's going to come in, he's going to get a little bit of shelter, and he might spark something. You never know. And this is a guy that's been playing men for a while, so it's not going to be that, but I really think it's going to be a different team. It's going to be a better team. They're going to be competitive. I agree with Sanjay. They're not going far. Like, they're going to burn out eventually. Yeah. But I do think that this is the start of a good change, and they made a smart choice. They're not going for bottom. They're not aiming to lose. Their goal is to try to win or be competitive at least.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And it will be interesting to see how Stützle does. You think of last year with Capo Caco. I took him in my fantasy pool thinking I was so smart because I figured he was just going to destroy the league and be a great pickup. And, he just was overwhelmed his first season. So you just never know how those young players are going to handle the NHL. But if he can come in and provide like quality top 6 minutes and points, I mean, that's going to be great for the Senators because they don't have enough forwards that can do that. Connor Brown was a bit of a surprise last year. He put up some pretty good points. I think he got like 50 points or something, didn't he? Wow. He didn't get that chance in Toronto. He showed he does have some offense to his game, but I'm not sure if that's going to be he's going to be capable of that consistently, or if that was just a one-time thing. So I guess we'll see there. But I just don't think there's enough on this team.
No, that's fair. We're gonna move on into I guess we should actually say a prediction. That's kind of the next part, right? Yeah, so we're gonna do that ranking piece here. I was trying to find, Chabot. Listen, this is just a side note there. Chabot's even strength defense is listed around like 37 on this according to Andy and Rono's player cards, but his even strength offense is rated at 95. So so we're going to do our prediction there based on that, which is this show where we think this team is going to end up. So I'll give Adam a little second here, and then 3, 2, 1.
7.
Oh, Barrett. I was like, what? There we go.
All around.
I just did it slow.
You did. You teased. I fell for it.
I did tease. I did. Well, we're going to keep it in Ontario here. So we're going to start off with the Ryan Pilon special, which is the Toronto Maple Leaf regular season summary speed run.
The Toronto Maple Leafs began the season by naming John Tavares as the 25th captain in their club's history. In the offseason, Auston Matthews was charged with disorderly conduct. That charge was dropped on November 15th. After a 9-10-4 start, head coach Mike Babcock was fired. Sheldon Keefe was named as his replacement for the remainder of the season. Criticisms of Babcock would then come out, like when he had Mitch Marner list his teammates from hardest working to laziest, and then revealing that list to his teammates. Bad form, Babcock. Meanwhile, Keefe had a historic start to his coaching career. He won 15 of his first 20 games, the first ever Leafs coach to do so. At the time of the All-Star break, the Leafs were 4th in the Atlantic Division with 57 points. Matthews, Marner, and Frederik Andersen were named to the All-Star team, though Matthews sat out due to injury. On February 5th, the Leafs traded for Jack Campbell and Kyle Clifford. February 22nd, the ultimate embarrassment. 42-year-old Zamboni driver David Ayres had to step in as an emergency backup goaltender for the Carolina Hurricanes. He stopped 8 of 10 shots to get the win against the Toronto Maple Leafs. When the season was suspended, the Leafs were 3rd in the Atlantic Division, 8th in the Eastern Conference with 81 points in 70 games, a 95-point pace. Now let's take a look inside the numbers. The Leafs were great at both offense and puck possession, finishing top 10 in every one of these statistics except for giveaways. It was without the puck that the Leafs struggled. A below-average defense and borderline bad goaltending and penalty kill resulted in the 6th most goals against in the league. The Leafs also didn't have much grit, finishing among the bottom 10 in hits and blocked shots. With 80 points, 47 goals, and only 8 penalty minutes, Auston Matthews was a finalist for the Lady Byng Memorial Trophy. He was just 1 goal shy of the Rocket Richard Trophy and was on pace for 55 goals, which would have passed the Leafs' record of 54 by Rick Vaive. And that was the Toronto Maple Leafs regular season summary speed run.
All right, thank you for that recap. So this one went to Adam because he just wants to know more about the Leafs and Pilon, and I think that's a great way to go. So hit it, Adam.
Right, I'm ready to see those judgmental looks from that blue glare underneath me.
This is the Ryan reaction counter. Watch his face, take notes of how it goes.
Take a drink for every wince. Some of the major departures from the Leafs were Frederick Gauthier, Tyler Gaudette, Mika Salamaki, Kevin Gravel, Cody Ceci, Kyle Clifford, and Tyson Barrie. More notably, Nathan Horton and David Clarkson's contracts.
There's one reaction I counted.
All right, some new arrivals, though, that seem a bit better than a lot of the departures is TJ Brody, Wayne Simmons, Zach Bogosian, Jimmy Vesey, Aaron Dell, Jumbo Joe Thornton, and Michael, hey, I've been here before, Hutchinson. So with a well-rounded roster of veterans and youth, the Maple Leafs have an opportunity to compete for the division title in the North. Can their defense manage to help Andersen out a bit more? Can they remain consistent throughout the season? I guess we're about to find out with Matthews on the penalty kill.
Well done, Adam.
I counted 3. I counted 3 reactions where you were either like
they were usually
or intrigued. Yeah, but like laughs. Choking laugh, like I'm
gonna kill him.
I laugh so I don't cry.
All right, so actually, no, since Adam's doing it, let's hear about his. What are his thoughts on their regular season, how things went around, and into the playoffs?
Well, I think that a lot of those players throughout the first half of the season felt suffocated by the systems that Mike Babcock brought in. I don't think he was willing to even budge too much on anyone else's kind of philosophy of play. So I think that killed a lot of buy-in near the end. Once Keefe came in, I think the players felt like the piano that was kind of had been tied to their ass was loosened, and they got to really take off and kind of bring their own spin on the system that he was bringing in. Case in point, like I said before, was Tyson Barrie, right? You didn't see much production from Barrie, and then once Keefe took over, he started lighting things up, right? Matthews started to play more freely. They just seemed like a team that was a bit more loose out there. We also got to keep in mind too that they've got like such star power and skill in guys like Marner, Tavares, Matthews, and then adding veteran leadership like Wayne Simmons, Joe Thornton alongside of Tavares, I think that's a good thing. And, they've got a couple guys on the back end that are really good, and Riley and TJ Brody. Who
Jake
else
Muzzin.
is Jake Muzzin? I was going to say Muzzin, but for some reason I was like, is he a forward? No. You got the star power at the front, like I said, and then in goal, you've got a really good tandem of goalies with Anderson and Hutchinson. So, and bringing in Dell, that's not a bad third.
Elon, it's your go. It's your team.
All right, it's my go. I will say that this was probably the most frustrating, disappointing,
train wreck,
irritating season that I can recall in quite some time. Even more so than like the Kessel years, because at least back then there really wasn't much expectation. This was a team that was supposed to contend for a Stanley Cup, and they just disappointed. They fell short of the regular season aspirations and then in the playoffs. There was a bunch of things I think that led to this. The Kadri-Barrie trade did not work. Barrie was not the kind of defenseman they needed, and I think they really missed Kadri on that third line with his grit and scoring. As Adam mentioned, Babcock, he should have been fired before the season began. Their defense, it wasn't as horrible as most Leaf haters like to say, but it was below average and not good enough to even consider contending for a cup. Injuries, no one wants to blame injuries or use that as an excuse, but they did have a lot of injuries last year. I don't think they had their full lineup in a game even once all season or playoffs. And then there's depth. And when you have those kind of injuries and you don't have depth, especially on defense, and you're bringing up rookies like Rasmus Sandin and Timothy Liljegren, bringing up Martin Marincin, former Edmonton great, you're struggling. You're really struggling. Like you look at their defense last year, Justin Hall, it was his first full season in the NHL. Rasmus Sandin, rookie. Timothy Liljegren, rookie. Travis Dermott, it was his second year. Just a really young, inexperienced team. And then the big ones, goaltending. Frederik Andersen had a really bad year. The defense in front of him was actually better than it had been leading up to this season. In terms of shots allowed and scoring chances allowed, yet he just had a terrible season. And then their backup goaltending, they didn't have any. Michael Hutchinson had 4 wins in 15 games. So luckily
terrible start.
Oh, you couldn't rely on a backup goaltender, and they wanted to rest Freddie Anderson and they couldn't. So luckily they made the switch to Jack Campbell. They got him in a trade. And then the biggest reason I think was just, I don't know what you want to call it, if it's heart or if you want to call it grit or if you want to call it toughness, but it just felt like the Leafs were just hoping to show up to games just to play pond hockey and use their skill and skate over teams. And I don't want to say they weren't trying, but there's a difference between trying and giving it everything you've got. And it never seemed like they were doing that. It didn't feel like they were trying for those 50-50 battles along the boards or hustling back on defense to get back in position or standing up for each other and pushing back. And it was disappointing because in the playoffs against Boston, I saw plenty of that. They were hitting, they were scrapping, they were working hard. And it almost felt like they were waiting for the playoffs to come and didn't really care about the regular season. And I'm sure that's not the case, but it just kind of felt like that. I'm sorry. This is my time to vent and get this off my chest.
Yeah, this is the whole reason why we started the podcast. He's leaving after this episode.
Oh, I feel so much better now.
I got 2 points I want to make just about what you're saying. The first one is like, I know you edit this video, so if all of the other segments are short and this is like a 20-minute long one, I know you're just like trying to get it off your chest.
That's right. All that will be cut out.
But you did point out some interesting things there, specifically like how some of the players responded, how they performed under specific coaches, and even afterwards, how they moved towards this. So Sanjay, I got a question for you. Like, I'm sure you're familiar with this, but do you think this was a little bit of a Moneyball situation? And I don't mean necessarily a Moneyball situation in we're using analytics, blah, blah, blah. But I mean in the situation that if you watch the movie Moneyball or read the book, when he initially builds the team is built to perform a specific way. And the GM Dubas has a coach that's already brought in for him under Shanahan and under Lou Lamoriello in Mike Babcock, and Babcock is running the team his way, and Dubas has built it to run another way. Do you think that's what occurred in this situation? Is that why there was such a drop-off in expectations where things weren't working? Or do you feel it was something different?
That makes sense to me. If you look at Babcock's teams and the teams that he had that were successful, they were a lot older. They're a lot more gritty. You look at those Ducks teams that he had and the Red Wings teams. And then you look at this Leafs team. This Leafs team, like those teams were built kind of like a Chevy truck. Whereas this Leafs team is like a Corvette. Like you got to let those horses ride. Like this team is like maybe not like Oilers in the 80s, but it is like a Cadillac. Like if you look at that offensive talent up front, it'll make any fan like drool of like, I want this on my team. You're talking about Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares, Joe Thornton. Like that's 5 players, and it's not even like everything. So I definitely think that's the way it was. Like they just weren't connecting. And you look at some of the draft picks, like Babcock maybe. I mean, I guess Matthews was like the obvious choice, but even like some other players, Babcock probably wanted more like stay-at-home defenseman or more
Leo
like
what's more Leo Komarov.
Yeah, right. Like it just didn't make sense. And like a player like Kadri worked in the system. And then he was shipped out. So I'm sure like when Babcock heard that trade, he probably wasn't happy about it. He seemed like Kadri seemed like a player that played well under Babcock, and seeing him leave probably irritated him and didn't help things. And I will add with Kadri, he was this close to coming to Calgary, but he declined the trade. I think it was like for TJ Brody. So they ended up getting TJ Brody anyways, but Calgary got nothing. So I'm a little bit bitter at Kadri.
They wanted a chance at winning a cup, so it makes sense. So here's the thing, like Pilon, you made the comment like you were very disappointed how the season went. You listed all these problems, but like, are you actually like down as a fan on the team, or are you actually up on the team?
I loved their offseason. I'm actually really excited going into this season. I think their defense looks better, at least on paper, than it has the entire Matthews era. I think TJ Brody is going to be the best partner that Morgan Rielly has ever had. I think bringing Zach Bogosian in was great. He'll add some physicality to the back end, and he can play up in the lineup if he needed to. He played great in the playoffs with Hedman. Mikko Lehtinen, the Finnish Bobby Orr, KHL Defenseman of the Year. He's coming in. It'll be interesting to see how he can adapt to playing in NHL. So they just have so much more depth on defense than they ever had before. Those guys, like I was mentioning, Travis Dermott and Rasmus Sandin, these guys that were playing consistently last year are now on the outside looking in and having to fight their way into the lineup. And that's going to be huge for them. On offense, they did lose some offense, like losing Kasperi Kapanen and Andreas Janssen. They're consistent 20 goal scorers. That's going to hurt.
Clarkson, Horton.
Yes, the ghosts of them, anyways.
Yeah.
The ghosts of their contracts. So that'll hurt. It'll be interesting to see how Joe Thornton does. I was not expecting him to play on the top line. I thought he'd be a third line guy, on a third line center. So it'll be interesting to see how he does playing alongside Matthews and Marner. But I really like the look of the third line with Kerfoot, Mikheyev, and Hyman. I think they finally have a checking line that they've never had before, at least not for a really long time. So I think that's why they have Thornton and VC up higher than I thought they were going to be. It's because they really wanted those three together. So
there's been a lot of talk though about how that Thornton line is constructed, and essentially it's not a full-time thing. It's an offensive zone start thing, because the idea is there that he will be there to take those shots, and then he'll go further down the lineup. So you're not wearing him out. Maybe he'll have off days, etc. But when he came in and they showed that he was starting, people were like, what the hell? This doesn't make any sense. Because there's lots of complaints that he's lost foot speed and stuff. He's still a great locker room. He still has a lot of potential. But I do not understand the argument where they say, like, we need to bring in these guys to, like, help them lead. You have John Tavares, who's arguably one of the most underrated captains in the Islanders' time. Well, I guess he wasn't. He is now, but he wasn't probably at the time. He was a really good leader. He's a guy with like global experience representing Team Canada. You have other big names in there. So I always find that weird that you constantly need to bring in more leadership at that team, because then that tells you that there's something else going on that's problematic.
I think the problem is they're more like of a quiet leader. Like, I mean, I don't know them. I'm not in the locker room, but I've heard from reports who talk about, the Leafs the Leafs bench is just dead quiet during games. And I think that's what they were trying to address. And a lot of times when you saw the Leafs early in games, they fell behind because they just weren't playing with that fire to start off. And then they would have their regular comeback, hopefully, and start playing like midway through the game. So I think they're hoping that if they can get some more vocal leaders, and from what I've heard, Joe Thornton is a vocal leader. Wayne Simmons will get right in your face. Then there'll be a bit more fire to this team, a bit more urgency to get pumped up and to get ready to go right off the bat.
Steve Simmons had a great tweet about how him, Simmons, and someone else combined only had 8 playoff game or series past the first round. And everyone's like, no, Joe Thornton had over 8 alone.
Yeah.
It's like deleted, which just is one of those fantastic moments. Okay, well, that's pretty good depth on the Leafs there. So I know Ryan's.
I'm sorry, I did turn into ranting, Adam. I said I wasn't going to, and I did. I'm sorry.
You were a quiet ranter. You were a very quiet ranter. You were like, well, no, they did this, and then this happened. And it's like when you have that really depressed person chat and telling you something, and you're like, wow, wow.
I depressed all of our audience, and now we'll end up getting like 10 thumbs downs now.
You know what? You
at least 10.
Strong. You started out as a disappointed father, and then you started yelling at us.
Yeah.
And it's got worse.
I ended on a high note.
That's fine. It's your team. You're allowed to have your feelings. Yeah, that's right. Exactly. So let's give it our opinion here. Let's see where we're standing, and we're going to go with where we think this team's going to end up at the end of the North Division here. 3, 2, 1. Let's see it.
What? Oh, okay. I was like, I hate you, Sanjay.
Oh, it's good.
All right, that wraps up the Toronto Maple Leafs. Moving on, we have the last team in Canada, the greatest team in Canadian history and probably in hockey history, whether you like them or not, the Montreal Canadiens. So we're going to start that with our final and last delayed offside regular season summary speed run.
Sick of these yet?
Montreal Canadian edition.
On October 17th, the Canadiens' 14-year sellout streak came to an end at home in a game against the Minnesota Wild. In fact, they sold out only 25 of their 41 home games during this season. They had 8 straight losses. This was the Habs' longest losing streak since 9 consecutive losses in the 1939-1940 season. On December 3rd, it was their 110th anniversary celebration, just 1 year shy of Bilbo Baggins' legendary birthday. At this time, it was their captain's reunion. 11 of the 12 retired captains were in the house for this historic reunion. On December 12th, Caden Primo recorded his first win with 35 saves after being called up from the minors on December 2nd. On January 2nd, the Canadiens trade for Marco Scandella from the Buffalo Sabres. On January 3rd, they signed free agent Ilya Kovalchuk to a 1-year contract. On January 25th, at the All-Star break, the Canadiens ranked 5th in the Atlantic Division with 51 points in 50 games, and Shea Weber was named to the All-Star team. On February 24th, at the trade deadline, the Canadiens were sellers, trading Ilya Kovalchuk to Washington, Nate Thompson to Philadelphia, Matthew Pekka to the Senators, and Marco Scandella to the St. Louis Blues. On March 12th, when the season was suspended, the Canadiens were sitting at 5th in the Atlantic Division, 12th in the Eastern Conference with 71 points in 71 games, an 82-point pace. Now let's take a look inside the numbers. The Montreal Canadiens had a rough year with giveaways. This generous team ranked 28th in the league. Their shooting percentage was an abysmal 8.58%, which had an impact on their 22nd ranked power play. On the bright side, they were 2nd in the league in shots and 3rd in Corsi percentage. Their scoring and high danger chances were 5th in the league, but just wasn't enough for this snake-bitten team in the scoring department. Shea Weber had his monster shot from the blue line garnered him 15 goals and 21 assists. Weber was also the Montreal Canadiens All-Star Game representative. And that was the Montreal Canadiens regular season summary speed run.
Okay, so this was my job to do the Montreal Canadiens summary here, so I'm going to read this information off. Montreal Canadiens ended the regular season with 71 points in 71 games. And if you can't remember, despite the fact that they got into the relegation round, they were actually behind the Panthers for points in games earned. They had the same amount of points, but the Panthers had done it in 69 games, meaning they were further behind in the stands and less likely to make the playoffs. But then something magical happened, which was their postseason run, where they shocked everyone, especially me, and beat the Pittsburgh Penguins handily in the relegation round and moved on to play the Philadelphia Flyers. And this kind of brought in a change in Montreal, where all of a sudden they looked at that team and said, hey, in a short-term run with the right pieces, this team can go. And with that, the team started to make a bunch of changes. Now, right now, they're currently sitting, according to Cap Friendly, at $82,616,309 for their cap. And Price and Weber are starting to get a little bit old. Their two big cores are starting to head on the downside of 30. But they started to make a ton of moves here that are really important. One, they flipped disgruntled center Domi and traded him to Columbus Blue Jackets for Anderson, who was often injured last little bit, had 1 goal, 3 assists, and signed him to a monstrously long 7 years at $5.5 million. This was a huge change in the sense that they brought in a big-bodied winger who, by all accounts, is actually flying around at camp. Very big, very strong, has a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, but they did sign him very long-term, which might be one of those things that became a problem. The playoff round also kind of brought out the Kotkaniemi, where they started to show that they have competitive skills and can start really playing out. Prior to this, Kotkaniemi had been very much a question mark in the Montreal Canadian market as how he was performing, but he really started to shine in this little bit. They signed Joel Edmondson, made a trade of a 5th-round pick to get him to lock him down, and they brought in Jake Allen, who'd been a starter prior to this, and now have legitimately brought in someone who can play a fair amount of games in long spans to give their goaltender, Carey Price, a little bit of a break. Price had probably played more games. He actually plays more games usually in a season than this current NHL season will go for. So that's something to think about. You're going to reduce his time, meaning that if they get into the playoffs with a rested Carey Price, this team is ready to knock some heads. They also brought in Tyler Toffoli, who had gone from LA to Vancouver, locked him down for, I think, $4.2 million, which is a bit of a pay cut for him, but it gives them a little bit more additional scoring and means their top 6 has become a lot more solidified. They have a good center depth of 3 strong centers, one who's a little unhappy about it. And they locked down Jeff Petrie as well, which helps make that go, and Gallagher. So the team has made a bunch of different changes to really stock up here and move forward in this offseason. With that, I'm going to jump down here to Adam. What are your thoughts on the Montreal Canadiens offseason? Where do you see this team going?
Well, I think first and foremost, they have the best goalie tandem maybe in the league.
After Winnipeg?
Second to Winnipeg.
Oh,
I knew it. I knew it was coming. I knew you guys, oh, God. This is legit, though. You got Carey Price, Jake Allen. That's probably the best 1-2 punch in the league. And then, where was I going? You've got a big question mark in Anderson, especially for 5 years. Can he produce at the rate that Domi was producing? That's a question mark. Yeah, he's a big body, but that remains to be seen. You got a Corey Perry who's on the downside of his career. They did need someone. I think that's a positive because they did need someone other than Brendan Gallagher in front of the net. And that's generally what happened in Montreal over the past couple of years. No one was really in front of the net or wanted to get there except for Gallagher. And so you're going to have that net front presence with Corey Perry. Who else there?
Tyler Toffoli.
I'm blanking. I think he brings a plus. Yeah, I think Toffoli is going to be a positive piece there as well. So, I think they've improved their team. Have they improved their scoring, though? That remains to be seen because they were always a team that depended on kind of 1-0, 2-1 wins. And in today's NHL, that's just not going to get you as far, as you need to. It's not an NHL of the 90s where it was gritty and there were those low-scoring games. This is a higher-scoring league than it used to be. So that's where I'm kind of seeing them. I'm kind of struggling with, are they good enough? It's got to be a show me.
I think it's interesting. Like you point out two things. You say like the scoring is an issue potentially for them, but they did add like a 20-25 goal score. Anderson, like long term, that trade will not be as good. I think Domi has more upside right now, but Domi's actually not proven it anywhere. He's had like one good season in Arizona. He's had one good season in Montreal. And Anderson was injured, but prior to that, Anderson had a lot of hype. And this is like a big forward. And I think the thing that's really noticeable is that they brought in players that fit Claude Julien's coaching style. Like he liked big, hard-hitting guys. You think about those core Bruins days, they're starting to build a team that's a little bit heavier, a little harder to compete against. Not necessarily faster, but harder to compete against. And I think that is a sharp contrast to what the team had been prior to this. Sanjay, what are your thoughts on the Montreal Canadiens?
I think they were kind of on the right path there going for a bit. They were lower in the standings. And then the play-in round, them beating Pittsburgh may have actually been to the detriment because I think they're a little bit closer than they actually are. Trading away some younger players and bringing in some, older players and signing in some more veterans and thinking that they can make a run. But in my mind, I just don't see the hype for them. Now, I'm granted, I don't watch a ton of Montreal Canadiens hockey, but they kind of remind me of Chicago, where they just got in, got hot, won a round, and then after that, they lost the next round. I just don't see it. Like you mentioned, they were 24th in the league last year, so near the bottom. And to be honest with you, I like Domi. I think he was a great like pest. Like people talk about Matthew Tkachuk and Brad Marchand being pests, but Max Domi was up there as well. And every time he played the Flames, I hated him. Like he was just impossible to play against. He was an agitator, and he brought a lot of energy to the Montreal team. And now that he's gone, I think they're going to miss him more than people realize. And another thing, I don't know if this is going to be a big thing or not, but no fans in Montreal. Montreal is always an electric atmosphere. Every time you go there, it's just insane. It was my pick to go anywhere in North America. But with no fans playing they're not going to have that advantage anymore. Say what you will about how the team's performed in the last 20 years, but playing in Montreal is still playing in Montreal. And I think they had a little bit of an advantage, and that's gone now. So to me, I'm not buying the hype. Now that I've said that, they're going to win this division. But to me, I just don't feel it.
It's interesting you use Chicago as comparison because I think they're on very different trajectories there. Like Chicago has a lot of guys long term that can barely play, but like Brent Seabrook is basically done. Crawford was ready to leave, whereas this team has Price. They still have other guys locked up, so I don't know if that comparison is easy.
Well, I just meant like a team that was kind of lower in the standings and got hot and won. Like I just meant like that kind of comparison. Like Chicago's not going out because they beat Edmonton, saying, "Okay, well we can make a run now." Much like Montreal is. Chicago's like, we still need to like retool and rebuild, whereas Montreal was kind of like, oh, we beat Pittsburgh, maybe we could make a run.
The funny thing with Montreal is they're an analytical darling. They're almost like, I found them almost like an elite team without having elite players or elite forwards at least. Like you take a look at the stats and they dominated puck possession, shots for, chances for and against were all great. But they couldn't score. They just didn't have those elite finishers on the team. And I don't know if they addressed that. I think adding Tyler Toffoli was a great depth piece. You already mentioned Josh Anderson. I'm not sure if he was an upgrade over Max Domi or not. I guess we'll see. I think the NHL is kind of a copycat league, and you see St. Louis win the cup, and you see what happened with Tampa and Dallas, and everyone's thinking, okay, we need the big bodies now, right? So they go out and get Josh Anderson. They go out and get Corey Perry. But really, this team needs elite scores. They need more than just Gallagher getting 30 goals a year or a season. So I don't know if they've addressed that, but what could help is Carey Price bouncing back. He did not have a good year last year. I'm not sure. I mean, Adam, I know you think like, it's the best goaltending tandem after whichever other goaltending tandem you think is the best.
Mike Smith and Costa.
But I just don't know. Like he hasn't been dominant for a little while now, but with bringing Allen in, he'll have less games to play. If he's more rested, maybe then he can get back to that dominant form. And if he does, then and they can get just a bit more goal scoring. And I think the big thing will come down to Suzuki and Kotkaniemi. oh crap, I screwed up how to say his name. Yes, thank you, Kotkaniemi. I think it's going to see how they develop. If they can turn into elite offensive players as well, then maybe this team can get enough goals to make a big push and a big dent in this Canadian division.
Yeah, I agree completely with Max Domi, though, in terms of what Sanjay had said about his energy, hating to play against him. He brings like such an energy and speed, and like it's almost like a want to play, want to win. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure you're going to get that with like Anderson. I'm not saying that he doesn't want to win or he doesn't bring intensity. I just don't think he brings that intensity. And that's a pretty rare form of energy.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Like I mentioned, like a Brad Marchand, Matthew Tkachuk, they're much of the same mold where it's just, I'm glad that he's gone from the North Division because he was going to be such a pest all year long. Yeah. And so him getting shipped out, that's great. Yeah. That's great for me.
And Carey Price's helmet, his new helmet, unbelievable. Have you guys seen it?
So sick.
Yeah.
Yes.
Unreal. Woo! Yeah. Woo! Wow.
Where we think this team is going to be. So 3, 2, 1. Number 1, baby. You think
Number
6 and 4? I will.
You really don't like Montreal at all, eh, Sanjay?
No, I'm not feeling them. I'm not feeling them.
We'll take money that they higher than 6 any day.
Mid-pack.
They're not going to finish 1. I'll tell you that.
Most of your picks I thought were so great, Sanjay, but
no,
because I had Toronto
that's
at
the
number
thing,
1.
Sanjay long enough, he has no real anything. Like honestly, it's awful. Okay, so we're going to do a little quick segment here. Just a little bit of a wrap-up segment here. We're going to have a bit of a question period. So we're going to ask some random questions to just get everyone's quick answer. Not a lot of detail. Just give me your answer. We'll move on from there and go to bit. And Sanjay's also got one. I don't know what it is yet. So if his is, if I don't cover it, Sanjay's going to throw one out at you. So here's my first question for the panel. The panel. Oh, God. Right at that point. Here's my first question for the group here, which are the right now, one of the big conversations is that Dubois wants out of Columbus and is looking to place. Which of these 4 locations do you think he goes? Does he go to the Anaheim Ducks, the Los Angeles Kings, the Winnipeg Jets, or another team? So where does Dubois go? There's a lot of eye looking in the corner, so I'm going to go straight to Ryan.
I guess I'll go with the Jets just because I've heard that rumor out there, and sometimes where there's smoke, there's fire.
His dad coaches the minor team, right?
Yeah.
Sanjay.
Jets, because we're talking about Laine wanting out. That'd be a good swap.
And Adam.
I'm not a Jet fan.
I'm gonna
be the Jets.
I didn't get what you were doing.
I was gonna say
Jets
the Oilers.
don't go that slow either.
I'm gonna go with the Anaheim Ducks because they have a ton of draft picks and can honestly probably offer more things up than most teams. So I'm going to say the Anaheim Ducks is where he ends up. It's not a bigger stage, but he'd fit there well.
I think it
All
is.
right, question number 2. Just questions, Adam. Just questions. Yeah. I'm just teasing. You can say what you want. Go ahead, say it.
It's a bigger stage. I think a lot of places are a bigger stage than Columbus.
Hockey-wise, yeah.
Yeah.
Hockey-wise, not football.
That's what I mean.
Not college football, anyway.
No, that's what I mean.
All right, should the Canadian division get an extra stay past this year? Should they keep the Canadian division beyond this year? Go ahead, Sanjay.
Absolutely. Keep it forever.
Adam?
Yeah, I like it. I think it brings a fresh look to, the Canadian teams. Do it for a couple of years.
I'm going to say no. Because I remember when they used to have heavy matchups between teams and people stopped going to games because they didn't want to see the same 6 teams compete over and over again. Pilon.
Well, I think if they did keep it, they would still play other teams like the old divisions, right? So they wouldn't play each other all the time. Right. But I also don't. While I would like it, I don't see it happening. I just don't see the numbers working out, and the travel would cost too much.
I think there's going to be a heavy imbalance between the coverage of the Canadian teams and the rest of the league. Like when you go fire up TSN this season, it'll be like half an hour before we get any other highlights because it'll just be all Canadian division, right? And I think the NHL doesn't want that. They want to see some of their other players, get more spotlight, and especially in Canada. So I think for the NHL doesn't want it, but if I were Gary Bettman, I would say keep it.
Yeah, well, that's exactly how I feel.
Given that lately Henrik Lundqvist and Zdeno Chara have left the teams that they've kind of been attached to for the longest amount, what is the likelihood that Ovechkin retires as a Capital? 100%, 50%, 25%? What are you saying there, Adam?
I think he retires in the KHL. I don't think he retires out of the...
No, but I mean in the NHL. What's his last team that he plays for? Does he play for the Capitals, or does he play for a different team by the end?
It's that team in the KHL that he retires from.
It's like a multiple choice question. Adam just puts E.
That's actually this answer.
One. Just circles. He's that kid that circles in the middle of the page, and you're like, "What's happening here?" I don't even know.
I truly think that Ovechkin stays. They keep him. Stays in Washington.
I'll say he goes somewhere else. I think he'll try to beat Gretzky's record and stay on longer than he should. And at some point, the Washington Capitals are going to decline, and they're going to want to rebuild, and they'll ship him out for something.
Sanjay.
I'll say he will stay, but I'll say Crosby will not.
Interesting.
Wow.
Interesting. I say he stays, but he goes the Yashin route, and they're still paying him like a couple million years and years and years later after he's done. I'll ask one more here, and then I think – actually, you know what? I'm going to go straight to you, Sanjay. You had one more question you want to ask?
Yeah, this is just like a fun question. It's not a very serious question. Maybe it's serious, but World Juniors just happened. Unfortunately, Canada came in silver medal, but congratulations to the Americans and congratulations to the Canadian team. My question for you guys is, when you're watching international hockey, and it could be any tournament, take Canada out of it, who's your second team that you cheer for? If, say, Canada's, doesn't make the medal round or whatever, who's the next in line that you cheer for?
The team with the most Leaf prospects.
Good answer.
In the Olympics, this past Olympics we had, I found myself really rooting for Germany. I thought, they were the perfect kind of Cinderella story. But if it's not Germany, it's either Sweden or Finland.
Yeah, I found myself cheering for Germany, and this is because I felt like they had a good team, and it was kind of neat to see that it's growing there. But usually I would cheer for Sweden, probably out of any of the other teams. Nice.
And I'm a Finnish fan. They're always my number 2 team. I don't know what it is. Doesn't hurt that Mika Kiprusoff played here. Huge fan of Teemu Selanne. So Finland's always my second team whenever they're in. And Finland is the only country besides hockey. Finland is the only country besides Canada where hockey is their number 1 sport. So I always want them to win and reward that. So I think that's pretty cool.
Nice, man. Nice.
Can I ask one question?
Sure,
yeah.
You got one.
Yeah.
Shoot him if you got him.
Who do you think will win the Stanley Cup for this season?
Can I go first?
Yeah.
Go for it.
All right, I'm going to say straight up, I think this year it's going to be Vegas Golden Knights. And if it isn't them, then I don't think they win the Cup next year or the year after or anything. I think this is the end of their window shutting. And I think also true that if Colorado doesn't win, and I don't think they're going to, but if Colorado doesn't win, then I think you're going to see big change there as well.
Adam? Okay. Sanjay?
Fair enough. Well, my heart says Calgary, but my brain says not Calgary. You know what? I'm going to go with, there's a lot of good teams out there. I'm going to go with Colorado.
And I'll have to say I agree with Barron. I think picking up Pietrangelo, if they can't do it now, I'd be shocked. Well, not shocked, because it's very tough to win, but I think they will definitely have a legit shot at it.
Yeah. So Vegas is in the same division as Colorado?
Right.
So they'll have to battle each other just to make it to the Final Four.
I think you'll get a good look at what they're going to be like as a team.
And do we count Dallas out? That's another, team that's still deep and still wants it. Like you saw.
I think once you
they were
get to
one
that
and done.
final and you lose, you're done. Yeah, I think that's, look at the Predators, look at all these other teams that get to the show, even the Rangers, like they get there and don't win it, they generally don't get back to the dance the next year.
Yeah,
Sometimes they do. Penguins.
Yeah. Penguins, Detroit.
Okay, Penguins in Detroit, like how long ago?
Crosby and Malkin in their prime, like ripping it up.
How long ago was that? Think about that, guys. It's been a while. They're not young anymore. Okay, with that is the end of Delayed Offside. Thanks for listening. Hit like and subscribe, and leave comments. Follow us on Twitter. You can see the post there. Great jerseys today, fellas. Nice stuff. And with that, we'll see you later. This is Delayed Offside. Baron.
I'm Adam.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Sanjay.
Check you guys later.
Delayed Offside.